Thanks, Nicole, Kevin, and Razor. Always good to see you. I appreciate your time. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances, though, obviously. Um, Razor, I'd like to start with you. We've talked before a couple times about your transition from player to broadcaster. Um, what kind of lessons did you learn from Rick Jeanneret in terms of having him as a friend and having him as a mentor in broadcasting, and how will you take those going forward?
Well, RJ, he pretty much taught you whatever you know. When I first started this, there wasn't a lot of direction. It was him sometimes being hard on you too. There's nights when I would say something, do something, and I could tell that he was upset, and he would let me know when there was a timeout. And I took an awful lot of beer to the buses at nights, just trying to get back on his good side. But he took the time, man. He understood it. He understood, the game itself, and he understood all about the business, and he wanted it to be right. And whomever he was with and working with, he wanted to make sure they were right too. So he put a lot of pressure on you, but I think it made a huge difference. It pushed the learning process.
And just a quick one for Donnie. Don, I remember on RJ night, one thing that strikes me coming into the press conference with the suspenders on. And just what did that whole night mean for you? You haven't been in this organization for 30 years like Razor, or grew up in Buffalo like Kevin, but the impact it had on you and that you're going to carry from that night.
Well, first of all, it had a tremendous impact on me, and you've come to know me and a little bit more. There's no possible way I would ever imagine myself wearing suspenders into a press conference. Nicole was pushing me to do it. So out of character for me, so out of my comfort zone, and he compelled me to put him on because of who he was. I can't imagine I'd do that for anybody. And I say anybody, meaning everybody. But RJ had a way that you endeared to him, and that was the entire night was something that I think all of us that were in the building that night will never forget. I mean, I knew, and I remember going into the night, RJ brought such a history. When you're in coaching, you think about how do I get your team to identify with the history of the organization. That I never had to worry about that because I was like our players around RJ, and he conveyed the history of the Buffalo Sabres to the hockey world. I mean, everybody knew the Buffalo Sabres, and I think you think of all the great talent that's been through here, but the calls that he made on that great talent, I think Rob said it on our RJ night, he made everybody more famous or more recognizable through his calls. So going into that night, I remember thinking, wow, it's a chance to be part of Sabre history here, to be, coaching or being involved in a game on his night. So I was really excited going into the game. Obviously, it didn't disappoint. The atmosphere was something I'll never forget. And yeah, I had no idea I'd wear suspenders into that post-game press conference, and I fought it, and it's something just compelled me. I have to do this. It feels right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for taking the time. Obviously, I'm sorry for everyone's collective loss here. I'd like to start with Rob. Obviously, you know him on a much more personal level than Sabres fans who just have decades of his calls and his catchphrases and, RJ's electric personality. His voice touched so many people to hold on to. But when it comes to beyond the airwaves, will you remember most about him? There's the lessons, but there's the camaraderie you two shared.
Yeah, I think that's how genuine he was. RJ didn't worry about what he looked like or anything like that. He just this is me, and people accepted it, and he was more than content to be like that. And he didn't want to try to be, and never tried to be anything other than what he was. And I just think he had such a passion for the game, and then a bigger passion for this organization, because it didn't matter how tough things were and how bad things were. When you sat and had a conversation with him, he'd always try to come out with a positive. But if this just happened or this just happened, it'd be so much better and things would get turned. So he was always that optimist, that he was always thinking, that things were going to get there. And for a long time, I'm glad he had a chance to come back when things were good, to have, that excitement back in the building, excitement doing the games again. And I know he really wanted to make sure that he had a chance to do that. I know he really wanted to have an opportunity to do one more playoff, but, not able. But I just think that I asked him one time, I said, hey, look, why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep working? You're 80 years old, 75 at the time, maybe. And he goes, I have to. The people depend on me. There's a lot of people that can't see this game, or the people that, are watching the game. They depend on me. And that's why I keep going. So it wasn't a selfish reason for him to keep going. It was him feeling that he owed something to the fans. And, he was on nights that he might not have been doing a game, or he'd be there early. He'd be like, I've got to go to the front lobby and shake hands. And we always joked around with, hey, look, you're Canadian. You can't run for mayor here. Just, get ready for the game. No, I got lots of time. He just loved the people. And I think that's the biggest thing. And he always never took advantage of his situation. He always respected the opportunity that he was getting. And till his last day, he still thought that was the greatest opportunity in the world.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Rob. Just a quick one for Kevyn. Something I've been thinking about today was a conversation I had with RJ a few months ago when his friend Paul Whelan had passed away. And he said, I don't want people, when it's my time, crying, sitting around over my passing. I want people to celebrate the life. And I guess my question is, even though it's very soon, how do you think you'll be celebrating RJ going forward?
Well, I think just, it's too early to say exactly organizationally, how we're going to do things, what we're going to do, but certainly that's going to be discussions. But I can tell you that we're going to celebrate RJ every day. You walk into KeyBank Center, he's part of the fabric of this organization. He's part of the history, the legendary calls, the relationships. And, I just think through what we're trying to build here. Donnie and I talk about this all the time, something special, a place that truly the players want to be, and really want to be a Buffalo Sabre, and what it means to wear that sweater. RJ's right in the middle of all that, and he showed our players over these, past couple seasons, a lot of our younger players, as Donnie mentioned, history of this organization and what he's done and been involved in. And I said on the radio this morning, I don't think there's a hockey fan in the world that doesn't know that voice. You can close your eyes and that's just the voice, and that'll be with us all forever.
Thank you, guys.
Hey guys, thanks so much for doing this on a tough day. Kevyn, I kind of wanted to follow up on what you just said about, RJ teaching kind of the history to some of these younger players. And I'm just curious what it means to you as somebody who got to grow up and fall in love with the game because of some of RJ's calls, that some of these young guys got to know him as a person, as much as him connecting to the history. Like, they got to have a moment with him and connect with him as a human, like so many others over the years.
Yeah, Matt, you guys have heard me say this before. I truly feel the luckiest person in the world to be able to get up every day and do the job I do. Have the opportunity to lead this organization. And, a lot of why I feel that way is because growing up in Buffalo and being in the barn, stick handling, shooting, pretending I was Gilbert Pro and announcing the game in my head was RJ, and he had such an impact on my passion for the game, passion for the Buffalo Sabres organization. And I remember, all the games weren't on TV when I was young, and even if they were, I wasn't allowed to stay up that late and watch them. And I would go to bed, and I'd have the radio next to my bed and listening to RJ call it, and it was like a dump in from the red line. Felt like it was a grade A scoring chance, and just the way his voice. And my mom would come up and say, it's time to go to bed. And I'd be like, how am I supposed to go to sleep? RJ's calling the game, and just so that just had such an impact on my life and my journey in hockey. And what I loved, kind of go back to a little bit of your question, what I loved our younger player, well, all our players, but our younger players especially, through the kind of year that we celebrated RJ's career, was the one-on-one conversations I saw them having, really asking questions, getting to know him sharing stories. You know, I never took that for granted personally for me, being on road trips where, you know, I'd grab RJ and just start asking him questions on the bus and just listening to him talk about the history and what he's done and what he's seen. And our players got to feel that. And I just think it's all part of when you think about being part of something special and it's bigger than you. Like, all of our players, staff, coaches, management, we all felt that and continue to feel that. And a lot of that is from the history that RJ provided for us.
Yeah, definitely. And Rob, I wanted to ask you, you know, a lot of, when I talk to people about RJ, the first thing they say is what a good friend he was. And he seemed to have this ability to connect with players on a personal level, while not, you know, losing sight of the professional side of things. What was it from a player's perspective that made him so easy to connect with off the ice?
Well, just the person he was. You could walk up to anybody, could walk up to RJ and have a conversation with him. And I think that RJ took the interest in the player. He got to know the player a lot. And, you know, he was one of those guys you would be around all the time. And he was almost like your dad or grandfather there, that, you know, these guys are looking at him. That's almost like a comfort zone for him. And the way he did his job, it was never in a negative light or anything like that. He always trying to find the positive side. So, no, and never a threat to anybody or a player wise. So, you know, I just think he was just easy to be around for the guys. And I know that, you know, back when we played and things would happen, you couldn't wait to get off the ice to rewind the tape to see how RJ described it. And, you know, he left an impression in guys' eyes because they wanted to do something special, just because they know that he would have taken it to the next level and made it even greater. So I just think that he was never a threat to anybody. And I think the players understood that and felt that, so they felt open to him.
Thank you.
Hey, Razor, in '99, of course, you're a player. You talked about RJ and they didn't get another chance to be in the playoffs. What was it like in '06 and '07, listening to him? Well, you're a relatively young broadcaster at that point. Him and Lorenzo, you're between the benches, and he's going crazy in some of those playoff games in '06 and '07. What was that like for you at that point?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad that I maybe understood it enough just to sit back and let him have his moment, because it was his moment. That's his times when these guys shine. And, you know, not interrupting, not getting involved in it, just letting him get on a roll and do what he did. And, you know, it just seemed the more he got onto that role, the more exciting he got, more creative he got, and what he brought to the game. That's what people want to hear. That's exactly what. I didn't want to hear anything other than what Rick was trying to say and describe. So, I tell you what, it was almost like being on the bench and sitting there and being a part of the game, but getting a chance to watch the game and listen at the same time, you know, in that live moment. It was unbelievable. It's just, you know, there's still times when I sit there and I'm like, wonder how he would have described that, or, you know, when after a game, he described something, I go, where did that come from? I don't know. And just, you know, just because it came so naturally to him.
And you said how the players would often want to hear the calls. I mean, yeah. When you scored against the Leafs in '99, how long did it take you after that game to hear the call?
I'll tell you what, in those kind of games, it was like you're running back in. Nobody really cared to high five in that. They get back into the room, and we didn't have access to it quite the way it is now. So it took a little time, but, you know, before everybody actually left the building, they rewound and were able to experience it through his call before, you know, and sometimes guys would be so excited about it. And the next day they'd be walking into the rink, replaying, you know, RJ's call on a goal they made or something that happened during the game. So it had a huge effect. And, you know, there's guys that were on that team 35 years old plus, and it still got them jittery and excited. And, you know, they were like little kids. And I think that's the way it's been from day one.
Thanks, man.
We don't have any other hands up. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions.
I could throw one more in if nobody's biting at the bullet. This might be a question more for Donnie or Kevin, but, and obviously not share anything too intimate, but obviously with so many of the players not here right now, just curious if there's been any conversations or talks about, obviously I see they're sharing the post that RJ's passed, but curious about sort of team discussions about this type of loss in the organization.
Yeah, I can go ahead and jump in if you want, Donnie, if you had anything. This is a call that was caught us all a little bit off guard. Obviously, we know RJ's been dealing with some, health issues for some time now, but I had texted with him a few weeks back, and so I don't even know at this point that we're still processing, and we just haven't had time to really sit down as a group. Not everybody's together, but I have no doubt that as we get into training camp, part of the conversations that Donnie and I'll have with the guys is about, it's bigger than you, and there's people that have paved the way in this organization in many different roles, from someone like RJ to players, coaches, equipment managers, trainers. And we all want to leave it better than we found it. And if you could take a little bit from that, that's what RJ did. He left this place better. He left this world better than he found it. And I just think that's a pretty powerful thing for us all to think about and talk about as a group.
Thanks, Kevin.
Rob, this question's for you. How much did you learn from Rick converting from player to broadcaster during your time with RJ?
Everything. Like I said before, you never really got a lot of direction or a lot of help in that area. It was just kind of thrown into the fire, and he took the time. He understood that it was a difficult thing to do, and he, right from the beginning, it was from day one. And like I said, it was sometimes tough love, and sometimes he was hard on you, but other times, he would get on the bus or after a game and call you after a game and say, okay, in this case, this is what we do. In this case, you shouldn't do this. You need to do this. So took more time than anything, than anybody to step in and try to help and give you the right direction. But, you just learn so many little things that you'd never learn, just, hey, let the game breathe at certain times and let the crowd this and just things that you would never know unless you had that experience and been through it. And the good thing about it, he didn't hesitate. There's been people that hesitated to pass on information. This guy, he was an open book, and you'd ask him anything, and he wouldn't just give you a brief answer. He would sit and explain why you'd have to do it or should do it, and things that would happen if you didn't do it, what it may lead to. So it's so deep into it that just, and then ultimately just being a little thing, but those little things, add up that, he just believed when you do it right or don't do it. And I think at the beginning that was an awful lot of pressure, but as you went on, you started understanding it more and you respected him for what he was doing, that it kind of forced you to, up your game as you go, just to try to, live up to his expectations.
Donnie, I wanted to ask you what you knew about RJ before getting to Buffalo, as somebody who, has an appreciation for the history of the game and stuff like that, what you kind of knew about him before getting here.
Yeah, I think as my first thought is what Kevin said. Nobody, to me, it felt like nobody in the hockey world that loves hockey would not know that voice. And so prior to coming to Buffalo, that voice was etched in my hockey memories and mind, and from Brad May's goal to every playoff highlight. And as Rob explained, every big goal in the franchise became known in the hockey world really and conveyed because of Rick. And so, I knew the voice of Rick and the power of that voice as a hockey fan in Chicago growing up, and then to get there and to be around him to see the depth as Razor's talked about so much here was amazing. And for me, the takeaway for me in the last few years being around Rick, RJ is he really does, and Kevin touched on it, but he does make you want to be a Sabre. He just does. He makes you proud to be a Sabre. Historically, he is just an amazing. He was just an amazing person, and so deep, so much depth. He could reach, our entire locker room, or he could reach players individually, and same with our coaching staff. He just walk in our coaching room and sense the mood right away and influence it in a real positive manner by the time he left that room, with perspective, with tact, with humor, with he had a feel for things and moments, and he thrived in the next moment all the time. It seemed like he was just so prepared for it. And so, yeah, I mean, I knew of him in the voice, but what a spectacular opportunity for me to be around him the last few years.
Yeah. What was it like to see, like he did that job for more than 50 years. Like, not a lot of people do anything for that long, and dedicate themselves to something. And for somebody who has also, dedicated your life to this sport, to see up close, somebody who was able to do it for that long and to touch so many people, like as just somebody who cares so deeply about the sport, what did it mean to witness that part of who he was?
Yeah, I think Razor hit on it here as well, and it just struck me when he said that. He mentioned that RJ felt it was a sense of obligation to the people that loved not only what he did, but loved being a part of the Sabres, being a part of Buffalo. And I don't think you can do it for as long as RJ did without having a deep sense of purpose and enjoyment in that. And that was real easy for us to see. So yeah, I just, I listened this morning, I flipped on the YouTube that our staff did, our staff behind the scenes that does all the video work. And I don't know, it was a 10-minute piece on RJ. And I thought by the end of it, it certainly was amazing. All of it, all the content and the way our staffing put it together. But obviously RJ provided all that, that he was able to see that, because it truly is, when you flip that on, I encourage anybody to watch that today. You really have a lot of pride in what's going on here and what's gone on here, really.
Thanks, Donnie.
Rob, could you kind of speak to how these guys, how RJ was able to he enhanced guys, he made them feel good about themselves just through a call. Could you kind of just, as a player, explain how that felt to hear him talk about you, I guess?
Well, there was one thing of the way he talked about you on television, obviously, or the radio. Because you always would hear it, and people would talk about it. But I think the way RJ probably made guys feel the most special would be, he didn't hesitate to maybe pick up the phone, or while you're on the road, call you in your room and have that conversation with you when he knew things were not going your way. And myself, I've had those conversations, and numerous other guys have, that I've known about, where was just so passionate about it and so understanding that maybe what the guy was going through. And a lot of the times, I looked at RJ as not only a friend, but for a long time, a father figure too, because a lot of us were young guys here that, your family's a long ways away. Back when we played, we didn't have the same communication that you could have now. And he had such a great sense of that, where he wouldn't hesitate to sit and talk to you about life, about the game, about everything, just to try to help out. Just away from it, not trying to step on anybody's toes or overstep his boundaries, but just as that father figure, as that person concerned, maybe watching the guy and something's a little off with them, and just trying to help out in that way. So you know, he had a knack of knowing when somebody might have needed a pat on the back or a little encouragement. And a lot of the times, not only doing it, you know, one-on-one, he would do it through his call as well, because he knew they would ultimately end up hearing it, and just to try to help that, you know, confidence level or just encouragement that way as well.
Thank you, Rob.